All right, cool. Howdy, everyone. This is Ryan and Shane again. We are jumping in for a shorter episode this time. Um, we want to maybe make a few shorter episodes every once in a while to encapsulate our thoughts about like some recent movie or just a movie we've both seen pretty recently. So we're not pulling any genres out of the cup this time or anything like that. Just talking about one movie here. And this episode, we've got a kind of crazy movie for y'all. Um, Shane, what movie are we talking about?
We're talking about The Substance, the new movie directed by Coralie Fargeat, I believe is how you say her name. Uh, yeah, it just came out like last week in theaters in the US at least, and it's completely batshit insane and awesome. Yeah, so it stars Demi Moore as Elizabeth, and she's an age. It's her 50th birthday and she's a Hollywood star who's sort of her star has faded over time, and gets into a she has an accident, and well, I guess also just so everyone knows, we're going to spoil the movie.
Ah, yes, good call.
So if you haven't seen The Substance, I think we would both recommend it.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so go out and watch it, and then come back. But yeah, she has a car accident, which is pretty jarring. That scene. And then she gets introduced to this substance which will create a younger beautiful version of her. And yeah, I guess we can just talk about it, sort of some of the scenes that stood out to us, but that's the basic setup.
Yeah. And that's pretty much all I really knew going into. Like I almost went to the early release at the AMC. And then I was like, you know what? It's kind of late and it's a long movie. The movie's like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yep.
And it was on a weeknight, so I didn't end up going. And then I went over the weekend, and I I I was expecting like this is crazy. I did not do any research about this movie. I saw it on the AMC app and was like, fuck it, I'm gonna see it. And I was expecting something along the lines of like Limitless, like Bradley Cooper popping a translucent Advil or something. Um, and so like that car crash scene, the like every scene, I was like, oh, this movie's kind of fucked up. And then and then it got like to the point when like halfway through, I'm like, ah, this movie's really fucked up.
Oh yeah.
Um, like this might be the the most shocking body horror movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Um, like I feel like the Cronenberg like keeps coming up when you look at like discussions about this movie, right? And like I can't even think of anything else that's like kind of on the same level. Um,
I think The Fly is pretty disgusting,
yeah,
but that sort of like has more of a gradual build. I feel like this movie has more like big moments that just shock you a little bit more, perhaps.
yeah.
But
Um,
I think this movie's also very funny at
mm,
times. Like it's also like there are some scenes that are sad and poignant, obviously, and it has like it's not just wacky, but it's also like a really fun time. And by the end, like people the theater, it was like playing like a comedy by the end.
yeah,
Like I mean, we're jumping to the end now, but like she's like curling her hair and putting on earrings like Monstro Elizasu,
yeah.
and everyone was just cracking up, and it was just a really fun, you know, movie theater experience.
That's another like important thing right off the bat. Is like this movie was incredible in theaters. I was just talking to my sibling, and they were like, do you think if I wait until it's streaming, it would be just as good? And it like kind of took me a while to answer because like it's kind of hard for them to get to the theater, but I was like, honestly, I think you got to see this one on the big screen if you can. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like every shocking moment, like especially in like a packed theater,
Yeah.
like you hear everyone all at once just reacting the same way.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of this is definitely a good one to see with an audience. I think it would still play well watching it at home, but I think there's like an added benefit of seeing it in a theater.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah, I mean, also another character early on in the movie is Harvey, played by Dennis Quaid, and his scenes, at the beginning when he's eating
the
the shrimp
shrimp.
and it's just
Oh,
disgusting, and the fisheye lens, and I thought his character was like pretty hilarious, just as a satire of sort of powerful men in Hollywood, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I think I was watching I ended up watching, this premiered at the Toronto Film International Film Fest not too long ago. And I ended up going on YouTube and watching like the interview that she did afterwards. And uh and somebody asks a question or mentions something about him being like this caricature, right? And her response was kind of like, unfortunately, this is like he seems so outrageous and like such a caricature, but like there are a lot of people who are unfortunate enough in Hollywood to like experience someone like that, right? And like that's like this guy was a fucking monster. Like right away
Yeah,
when you see him eating
I
that shrimp, it's like, dude, like wash your fuck like I
Yeah,
don't know.
I am kind
Gross.
of glad maybe just for the tone of the movie that it didn't go in specifically
Yeah,
Harvey Weinstein direction
right.
of obviously that maybe is implied, and I think I had that thought running through my head like is that going to happen?
Oh
Some sort
yeah.
of assault or something like that. But I think that would have made the tone of the movie just so dour, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think this movie really it is trying to be entertaining in a way, even though it is about like serious topics, but it is entertaining. And so I think they sort of balanced that line. They walked the line on that without going too far of changing the tone completely.
I think you're totally right. Like he's gross and like outrageous, but yeah, a lot of the implications of him maybe are like more subtle than pretty much anything else in the movie. Like I feel like this movie really like wears its themes on its sleeves. There's
Yeah.
like no hiding from like I mean the two probably biggest themes that I think everyone sees right away, right, are like body image and uh how women are like treated and expected, especially to be, especially like in Hollywood.
Mhm.
Um uh
Yeah, I think the movie, everything about the movie is like bold and in your
yeah,
face. Like they're not trying to, be subtle with anything. It's all, and that's even with the design of the substance and all that. It's all
yeah,
capital letters, just in your face, explain it to you as easily as possible, just because it's a crazy idea and they have to get us to understand the rules of it, you know. And I think
yeah.
it was pretty effective in that style. Like, some movies are trying to be more subtle and some are just bold in your face. And I think this one was very effective in that style of filmmaking.
Yeah, I totally agree. Have you seen Revenge?
Yes, I
Um,
thought that was a really great movie.
I haven't seen it. That's Coralie
I
Fargeat.
think, yeah,
Uh, I'm not French, so sorry.
that's how I've heard people pronounce it. I think that's right, but I don't know.
That was her last movie, the one that she did most recently.
Well, her first, yeah,
And her first. Okay, I wasn't sure if
yeah,
she had done anything else. And I hadn't seen it, but a lot of people I had seen like pulling comparisons of like um kind of the boldness of the movie.
yeah. So Revenge is sort of a modern uh, version of a rape revenge movie, but obviously it's directed by a woman and it has sort of that female perspective, and it's also very like bold filmmaking, and it's really I thought it was really great. And I actually went back and she has a short film on YouTube called
Oh,
Reality Plus. It's was made in like I think 2014, and it actually has some similarities to the substance because uh, the whole idea is it's set in this future world. It's a sci-fi short, and people get this procedure done where for 12 hours a day they can be sort of an idealized version of themselves, and then for the other 12 hours they have to go back to themselves, and then they have
Interesting.
to exactly. And there's actually imagery of the slit down the spine
Wow.
is in that short as well.
That's interesting. I'll have to watch that. Reality Plus.
Yeah, it's a very different tone. It doesn't have the body horror element of it, but it has similar themes of like of body image and people not being satisfied with who they are and trying to escape that. But the main character's a man, so that's sort of a difference to it.
Yeah.
But
Speaking of like uh the body image stuff, one, I wrote down that like this really like it's like a body horror movie that really I don't know, like it really emphasizes that body image stuff to like such an extent where it's like uh it's hard to watch at times because like you'll watch someone crawling out of someone else's back, right?
yeah,
But then at other times it's hard to watch like that scene when like Demi Moore just kept going back to the mirror
yeah,
when she's getting ready. Like that was almost somehow like equally disturbing. Like I think because it like builds up the whole time of like this is her moment to like realize that she doesn't need this other part of her, right? And like the audience knows, right? The audience is like,
yeah,
this is the time when she can turn things around, right?
yeah.
And to like watch her like just never be comfortable with herself enough was just like harrowing, right?
Yeah, I think that was probably the most grounded scene in the whole movie, where it
Right.
felt very realistic, and that's probably why it had that emotional impact. But yeah, it also makes sense, like story wise, where at that point she just has the one like fucked up finger, and
Yeah.
so she's like, okay, she could get out of this still, but sort of her own self-loathing or self image issues and all that, sort of, you know, send her down the wrong path to the path of Monstro Elizasu.
Speaking of, like, yeah, we have to talk about that. I mean,
That title card is one of the funniest things I've seen in a movie theater, maybe ever.
that it
Just
was so unexpected too. I mean, the movie is obviously not very realistic. For much of, I mean, much of the movie is pretty unrealistic, but like, I did not expect the like trauma style like uh monstrosity at the end.
yeah,
Like I was like, what the what is
yeah.
happening?
And then the actual ending in the theater with just all the blood and
Oh my
everyone,
God.
the reaction shots.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there was one of an old man just like with a shocked look on his face that was just cracked me up,
Yeah.
and it was just insane.
And then like it shows you the shot from overhead where like she's spinning around on the stage and her
Yeah,
arm is like cut off or whatever or broken off and it's
yeah,
just squirting blood everywhere. She's just like turning around in a circle. Everything is just getting covered in gore. Um Also the practical effects like all the way through were
incredible.
awesome. Especially like that monstro was just fantastic.
Yeah, the
Demi
effects
Moore's
were
face on the
incredible.
back. Oh, loved it.
Yeah,
Um,
that was very crazy to have her face on the back, just like perpetually like stuck. Yeah, exactly, stuck like that.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was insane. And I did look up the people who did the visual effects. I don't know. Obviously, it's probably a huge team, but I saw someone named uh, Brian Jones was credited as doing the visual effects. He was one of several people, but he also did the visual effects on Possessor, which
Oh,
is a Brandon Cronenberg movie, and that also had really incredible visual effects. So I don't know
interesting.
if Brian Jones is a special effects whiz that we could keep an eye on or something, but I
That's
just saw
awesome.
that connection.
I was trying to find out who did the visual effects because I was expecting to be someone like really well founded,
Yeah,
and I was pretty surprised to see that like none of the names were recognizable to me. But yeah, it sounds like maybe this Brian Jones guy might be the one to keep an eye on.
yeah, Brian with a Y.
Oh,
That's Brian Jones. I know, right?
never
That's the most fucked
mind.
up part of the movie, really. Just kidding.
Uh,
But yeah, I don't know. Are there any specific scenes that throughout? I mean, also we haven't talked about Margaret Qualley at all
oh,
yet.
that's true.
She plays Sue, the idealized version of Demi Moore, and she's very good in the movie. I feel like she doesn't have as much to do, like as far as like the emotional heavy lifting that Demi Moore does, but I
Mhm.
think she's very effective as that idealized version.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. I thought she did amazing. And the two of them just like did really well together, like both in how the movie actually came out, but also apparently like apparently Demi Moore was like a really good role model during the filming and everything, and apparently like Margaret Qualley was like really encouraging of Demi Moore, especially like in the full nudity sections. Demi Moore like said that Margaret Qualley was like the only person that could help her like get through those, which was interesting.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but and
And
just
it
like in the movie, yeah, she did a fantastic job, I think. Uh, interesting, like I feel like, and maybe in much of this movie, there kind of wasn't a lot of dialogue. Um,
yeah, she doesn't have a lot of dialogue throughout, really.
yeah, like, and it's funny because it follows around these two characters, Elizabeth and Sue, and neither of them really talk a whole lot. And at times, like you can go like a whole couple minutes in this film without like really hearing much going on. Like I think like the Demi Moore scene where she keeps going back to the mirror is one where there's no dialogue the whole time.
Yeah.
She might say something under her breath or something, right? But like there's really no dialogue and it's still like so impactful. It plays out almost like a silent film would, where like you have to rely on the acting and you have to rely on the actual design of the scene and all this stuff a lot more than just having a couple people talking, which I thought at times was really powerful in the movie.
Yeah, it's very like sparse use of dialogue, but when there is dialogue, it's very intentional and it has a point, has a purpose. Especially with the voiceover of her calling the uh the substance hotline or whatever and trying to get help and all that. Like when
Yeah,
there is dialogue, it has a purpose, but I think the lack of dialogue also emphasizes sort of Elizabeth's loneliness. Because
yeah, that's
really,
true.
at least this whole sort of alternate reality Los Angeles seems very like lonely for some reason. Like there's, there's just not many people around, or at least there's not like interactions with a lot of people. But even when she leaves, the camera's just on her. You don't see a bunch of people around, and it just sort of has a strange, uneasy feeling throughout. And, in her apartment, it's just her and she's, watching infomercials or whatever. And I feel like that feeling of her loneliness is emphasized.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I don't know if I even like really noticed that at like while watching, but looking back, that's a really good point and probably makes a lot of sense on why there wasn't a lot of dialogue. Like one, just necessity, like there wasn't actually a lot of people for her to talk to in the movie.
Yeah.
And two, maybe to emphasize that a little bit, like in the actual movie.
Yeah, I think also I was just gonna say something and the thought left my head,
Ah,
but I was gonna say that the loneliness of the character, I don't remember what I was gonna say.
that's all right. It'll come
Great
back.
podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, one more thing, this is our first one of these smaller episodes. These are much less script. Not that we really script anything, but like I have much less notes written down. These are a
Yeah,
little more impromptu, right? So,
yeah, we both just happened to see this in the theater and we both loved it. So we were like, oh, maybe it'd be a good idea to do a little episode 1.5.
right.
And so we didn't really take notes while we were watching, which normally I would have done. But
Yeah. Um, yeah. And one more thing just about a note that I did end up writing down after the fact is as I mentioned in the last episode, and as Shane, you know very well about me, I love 90-minute movies. In our last episode, we had two like really good length movies, both around 90 minutes. This is like not at all that. This is 2 hours and 20 minutes, but the entire time, like there was really no time looking back where I was like losing interest or feeling like it was very long. And every time when like something new would happen, like the title card introducing Monstro, like I was like just ready for it. I was like, give me more, like
Yeah.
yeah, this was like the 2 hours and 20 minutes. I could have sat there and not even known that uh I wasn't watching a 90-minute movie.
Yeah. Yeah. The pacing was, I thought, really good. Also, just to go back to what I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
remembered.
Yes.
Uh, we don't learn anything about Elizabeth's like history. We don't
Mm,
know if like was she divorced? Is she never been married? Does she have like are her parents dead? Are we don't know anything about her family
yeah.
or anything. So I think that also sort of emphasizes her being alone, of her not
Mm.
having any connections to anyone outside of her job.
That's really interesting. That's true. Really, like the only actual people that she talks to, um, there's like even just thinking about the other people in the movie in general, right? There's Harvey, who she talks to a little bit at the beginning. Um, there's the guy that gives her the substance, who was a nurse, but then she runs
Mhm.
into him later on, of course, and he's a weirdo. Like she's not really talking to him very much.
Yeah.
And then there's also that guy that from high school or whatever that gives her his number and
Yep.
the person that she like tries to get ready to go on that date with and doesn't. And then there's also technically like the neighbor across the hall that like is really creepy to Sue, but I don't think he ever actually interacts with Elizabeth.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's like he's very mad. He's like,
Mm.
keep it down over there.
Yeah,
And then
right.
he realizes it's Sue and not Elizabeth, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like I could give you a hand if you need anything. Like
Yeah.
totally changes his tone, which is
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. That guy was weird.
Yeah. I think so. I have heard people say that all the male characters in this movie are like monsters or horrible. And I do kind of agree, but also I think that the guy from high school that asks her out, he's kind of weird, but he doesn't do anything bad. Like he's
Yeah.
seems friendly and like genuine.
Yeah.
And obviously she doesn't end up going on the date, so he just kind of disappears from the movie. But I think I have heard that as kind of a criticism of the movie, but I don't really think that's fair. I think it's
Yeah.
just that there aren't that many male characters, you know?
I mean,
But
and like you said, there's really not a lot of characters at all, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's a good point. And I think like one thing that kind of I thought about afterwards was the fact that um, the person that gives her the well, actually, if we just look at two male characters at once, right? There's the doctor and the nurse when she gets in that accident. The doctor is kind of like more like in stardom, like cares less about her actual feelings, right? Like she starts crying and he's like, "Ooh, gotta go." And
yeah.
like bad doctor.
He says
Um,
his wife is a fan,
yeah,
like,
right.
but she's like, you know, very depressed, like just
Yeah,
had a car crash, not reading the room.
yeah, right. And then there's the nurse. And it's interesting that like the movie chooses to have a a male figure, right, give her the into the substance, right? Like um you could have made that a female character, but I think choosing to have a male character actually introduce her to the substance was definitely on purpose because I think that like there's obviously a lot of uh like body issues that can come up, particularly from like being being pushed on you, right? From the male's perspective, from a male, right?
Mhm.
As a woman. So like I think that was an interesting choice and definitely like one way to make a character in the movie kind of like a bad guy, but not necessarily intentionally, maybe.
Yeah,
Although, Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Well, we don't really learn much about him, but he's
Right.
sort of a victim as well in a way of his own insecurities or, not being able to deal with aging and mortality, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like we see him later on in the diner, and when we saw him at first, I was thinking like, oh, this guy's kind of scummy. Like he gave it to her knowing that it would be bad for her, right? And then I realized it's actually the young guy that gives it to her, right? Like,
Yeah.
ah,
And there was enough time in between that perhaps he was really
mm,
enjoying it at that time. And then, sort of as time progresses, he had the same thing that happened to Elizabeth of realizing that this was not all it cracked up to be.
yeah. And
And,
yeah,
oh, what were
yeah.
you gonna say?
I was just gonna say it's crazy how little control they have over the other part, right?
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, it does seem clear to me that it's like one consciousness going from body to body,
Right.
but while she's in a certain body, she sort of starts to like split in two and view them as different people, which is kind of interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I do think this movie, for a movie about what it's about, I don't know that it addresses like mortality that specifically, and not that it has to, but I think I don't know. It never directly addresses that. It's really more about like body image and the way women are treated in society. I think those are more the primary themes.
Yeah.
And I don't know that she's necessarily like she's more afraid of being old and ugly than she is about like dying specifically, maybe.
Right.
But I don't know. When she does get like really old, that is sort of like an image, like a horrifying image of death, I guess. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Also, a lot of like witch analogs when she's getting old, like the witch finger at first, and then like she's all the cooking and she's like got the
Oh yeah.
hunchback and everything. It kept making me think of like witch imagery and how they like witches in mythology have like sought immortality, right? And like it makes me think like, is this in a way like explaining witches? Like maybe they all just had this substance thing, but
Oh yeah.
I don't know that, and like they're like greedy and like they want to live forever and they don't care about what they use up for that, right? So they use up all their youth or whatever. Anyways,
That would be a cool. I mean, I don't actually want this to happen,
yeah.
but I there could be a
Ooh,
substance cinematic universe where we have like
canceling them.
substance in like the 1800s and
Yeah,
there's witches and they're making the substance in the cauldron
yeah.
I don't know, that could be kind of cool.
That's like
Uh
I definitely saw a lot of that like analogs going on of like the witches. And I don't know if that was on purpose or not, or just like uh aging lady cooking kind of looks like a witch. I don't know. Like that's not
yeah.
normally what I think of, but
I actually didn't think of like witches at all during the
mm,
movie, but now I do see what you're saying with the cooking and all that.
I think probably a good time to close off here. Unless you have any final thoughts, but otherwise maybe we can do our ratings and stuff real
Yeah.
quick.
I don't know. Final thoughts really was just I think it was a really great, bold movie and really kind of one of a kind. I mean, obviously it has influences of maybe Cronenberg and Lynch and I don't know, maybe just like music videos in general, you know. But I think Coralie Fargeat really makes it her own, and I think it was a really exciting, unique cinematic experience. So I definitely recommend it for anyone.
Yeah,
Not maybe not anyone, but for people who were into movies,
yeah. I mean, that's one thing is like it is at times hard to watch, right? Um, which isn't really a complaint. I mean, I think it's obviously supposed to be at times.
Honestly, the most disturbing parts to me were more of like when she like rips off her fingernail
Yeah.
and like the
Oh,
small things like that. When it was the 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 new version coming out of her, I kind of it was
it
kind of
was
gross, but
cool.
also cool, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so detached from reality that I wasn't personally like super disturbed by it.
Yeah.
But some of the like the fingernail or stuff like that was more disturbing.
Yeah. And I
Or
think
even that emotional scene we talked about.
right. That's what I think like because it's so like when she also when Sue is like just continuously injecting her and draining all that stuff out of her and leaving her in the closet with like jars full of the substance, the stabilizer fluid. Um, like it's like the needle's kind of gross, but also like more jarring. It's like you know that this is like irreversible, right? Like you
Yeah.
know shit's gonna get fucked up when she wakes up,
And
right?
that version of her before Monstro
Uh-huh.
Elizabeth, that was probably more disturbing, I think. Just
Yeah.
her, oh, her knee. That scene
Oh,
was
yeah.
terrible. But
Um,
yeah.
And so, like, I think at times hard to watch, but intentionally so. And I think it does a fantastic job at everything it's trying to do. And I think we'll hear about this movie and Coralie Fargeat. I think we'll hear about both them, the movie and the director, a lot. Like, I think if you are at all keeping up with cinema and especially horror, but really just any cinema, right? Like, you'll hear these names for a long time, I think.
Yeah, I think this movie like really put her in the category of like Robert Eggers and like Ari Aster, Jordan Peele of like
Yeah.
those new that new crop of directors that are really exciting.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
in my opinion, and I mean to get to the end of it, I mean I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was
Ooh,
incredible. I
yeah.
really I don't know. I thought it was fantastic and worthy of 5 stars. As it kept going on, it just got better and better to me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was really close to 5 stars on this one. But I landed at 4.5, and I don't know if that's really the right choice for me. Sometimes I like will change it later on after thinking more about it. But I think one thing that kind of stuck me is I don't know, like not that every movie has to be like rewatchable or anything, but I really don't know if I would sit down to watch this again soon. Like I don't know. Not that that's really like a downside, right? But um some of the hard to watch bits and everything, I think ultimately just made me drop it down to 4.5 for now. But
That's fair. I could see myself rewatching this like around Halloween, like
this
pretty
year.
regularly, to be honest.
Oh,
Maybe
all
not this
right.
year. Well, this year I'd have to go back to the theater. So
That's right.
probably not realistically. But maybe next year I'd watch it.
That's
I
good.
loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Well, let us know everyone else's thoughts. Please, shoot us a comment or however you can get in touch with us, please do. Let us know your thoughts on The Substance. Is it one that you'd rewatch every year on Halloween? What'd you guys give it? Let us know. Follow us on Letterboxd and watch more of our podcast episodes, either on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts.
Yep. We're on Letterboxd at Mind Your Movies, and Instagram is Mind Your Movies Podcast, I believe. Uh, so
And
yeah.
YouTube is also Mind Your Movies podcast. So yeah, find us wherever you like to enjoy your media.